When looking at the greatest teams of all time, what I would look at is what their culture is like, how their team acts on a day to day basis. Do those players come in with an attitude of "I'm great," or do they come in with an attitude of "we're losers"? Because and you could even read their body motions of if their team is great or good. So what we're going to look at today is what makes these teams great and the greatest teams of all time, and what they did to make these teams great. When looking at great teams, a lot of people look at the stats and the wins and losses and how many touchdowns they had and how many Super Bowls they won. But what I want to do is dive a little bit deeper into how these teams carried themselves. It's not all about the wins and losses, and the wins will come with due time. To create winners out of losing mentality teams, you have to set rules and examples of how to carry yourself. You have to mold these young men or even adults to train their minds from losers to winners. The road is not easy. It takes a lot of hard work and dedication to yourself and to the men in that locker room. It takes all to buy into what the coaches are preaching every single day. Holding men accountable for what you have said plays a role in this. An example found from the data had nothing to do with scores or stats that makes a team great. It is culture. Culture is what makes great teams. And that's what I'm trying to preach here, is that culture wins. That's how it works. This article interviews two of the greatest football coaches of all time, Bill Belichick, head coach of the New England Patriots, and Bill Walsh, head coach of the San Francisco 49ers in the 80s. Things that make these teams great can and have said from the inside of the locker room. How the relationship between coaches and players. The hardest part of building the winning culture is always a work in progress. You have to strive for greatness. And you cannot be satisfied with losing. You can't be satisfied. If you win a game, you can't be satisfied with winning that game. You have to keep going and keep going. That's what makes great teams. The things that made these two franchises in their prime incredible was not just who they had on their team, because the New England Patriots had incredible athletes, but they had huge winning culture. Guys who came into the team rooms ready for another day, not satisfied with the win they had last week. They always wanted better. This mentality comes from the head coach. The players want to win, but ultimately has to be set example from the coach. It is challenging, but when done correctly, you see the results. Bill Belichick, being the New England Patriots head coach, won 6 Super Bowls. And when Bill Walsh was the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers, he won 3 Super Bowls. I've just given 2 great examples of winning mentality teams. So now I'm going to give you 8 reasons why teams are great at working together as a unit. This has nothing to do with talent or anything. This is strictly the fact of how they work together. In an article I found, it's called 8 Characteristics of a Great Team. It is said that to be successful, everyone has to have the want and has to have that drive of, yes, I am great, or yes, I want to be great. Who is on the team definitely plays a huge role in the team, but it also how do those teams and players and coaches on that team work together. The way they also do this in the NFL is they go out and recruit some programs, get the best available guy without thinking, will this guy work in the guys that are already here? A great example of a team that really dives into getting the best guy for the program is, do they follow all the criteria of their culture? That's a great question to ask. Do these guys follow what we want in our culture? Will he come in and set a great example and just mold with everyone else? The second question I would definitely ask is he willing to go all out for the men on his left and right? So when I'm playing and I look to my left and I look to my right, do I know that guy is going to work and work and work and work for the guys on his left and right? That's a really, really good question. And another question I would definitely ask is this guy someone who I can rely on every single snap? So when the times get hard and he's had a bad game or we're just not playing very well, can I trust that guy that he'll keep his head up and he'll keep going? That's someone you want to recruit. That's someone that you want on your team. And so when looking at those questions, you go, what team did this? The team that has done it for 20 years and does a great job is the New England Patriots. I know I'm giving a lot of examples of the New England Patriots, but Bill Belichick knows what he's doing because you see his resume, 6 Super Bowls. Like, he wins. He knows how to win. He makes winning cultures. He takes guys that no one knows about, but they fit perfectly into their culture. Absolutely perfect into their culture. And this also fits right into the mentoring. When you bring a young guy in, how are you bringing them in? Are you just saying, here's the playbook, or are you mentoring them? Because that's a huge thing. Is, are you bringing them in and going and like helping them through the process? Because a lot of these guys, they're 22, 24 years old, so they're still young men. They're still trying to figure out how everything works. And you've just recruited them and give them millions of dollars to play football. So they're all excited. But now it's time for business. Now it's time for them to go and put in that work. How will they respond? So there's a lot of veteran guys on the team. These veteran guys need to take what they've already known because they've been in the league for a long time. Are you mentoring these guys? Are these veteran guys mentoring the brand new rookies coming in? And so that's the relationship that is described in this article by both players and coaches, is building a structure that the base of the players and coaches and staff can know where everyone stands. If you build that great base, you can only build up from there. So once you build a nice cement base and you can build that house on, and that's the house of champions. That's how it works. Once you build a great house, a great foundation, the wins will come. With my research on who is the greatest team of all time, you can look at stats, but you also have to know how the locker room is functioning. You have to know how the players and coaches are responding to what they have been given or the task at hand. As a coach, you are a leader of that team. You have to move your staff forward as a unit. Everyone in that program, every single person has to know how the rules are, and you have to move them as a unit. That is why it's so crucial for the coach to set guidelines and rules for the players and staff to abide by. When you look deep into how the team is inside the clubhouse or in the locker room, not by what is going on the field, you can get a good feel how the team is. For example, when a team loses a close game that they are not supposed to lose, how will that team respond? Will they sulk in their loss, or will they come back on Monday and work harder to never have this happen again? These are questions that make a team from good to great, not by just stats. What they do outside the field that makes them great. That is what it really is about. How can you take a good team? Because teams are good. There's a lot of good teams out there. But how can you take a good team to make them great? That's a question we all have to ask. That's how this works. We are done with doing why coaching and why foundation and why culture is such a big thing. We are now looking at articles that tell us why these teams were selected as the greatest teams of all time. And it's easy to see their record and how they played and who their coaches were. That is also a big thing. So now we're going to look at articles that tell us the 3 top teams that are considered to be the greatest teams of all time. For our first article of the day, we are going to look at the USA Today's rankings of the best NFL teams of all time. They give us a list of 1 through 50, but we're only looking at 3. And the reason I chose this was they don't specialize in sports. It's just their sports page for the USA Today. So I thought that would be really cool because it's a different viewpoint than if we just look at like ESPN or Bleacher Report or some of those main, they're only sports. And so for our number 3 team, it is the 1962 Green Bay Packers with their coach Vince Lombardi. And if you don't know, when you get the championship trophy from winning the Super Bowl, it's named after Vince Lombardi because he's just an incredible coach, did great things in Green Bay, and he's recognized for it. And every year they're like, you got the Vince Lombardi trophy. So it's a big deal. This team was arguably the greatest team of all time, but in the article they only came at 3. They had great athletes, but for the USA Today they only came out at 3. For number 2, we have the 1984 49ers with their head coach Bill Walsh, and I already talked about him before. Great coach, great guy, knows how to build a program. That year they won the Super Bowl, and then before the 85 Bears went on the run, and I'll talk about them later. They're not extremely flashy, but some of the greatest players from Joe Montana to Jerry Rice. And if you don't know who those are, they're Hall of Famers. Both of them are in the Hall of Fame as we speak, and they're incredible players and will be remembered till the day they die. and even after. Their offense was full of extreme talent, but they only came out at 2 for the USA Today. But for number 1 on the USA Today, we have the 1985 Chicago Bears with their head coach, Mike Ditka. And I didn't talk about Mike Ditka much, but he could be considered one of the greatest coaches of all time as well. He won a Super Bowl that year. They were incredible. They had incredible talent, incredible defense. They were actually known for their defense because Mike Ditka put an emphasis on this is how we got to play, this is how we play, and that's just, they flew around, they played hard, they had a huge chip on their shoulder, and they were just a great team. Not only did they have a dominating defense that season, they also had one of the greatest running backs of all time named Walter Payton. So great that he has an award. So if you are an extremely good athlete in football, it doesn't matter what position you play. If you're a good person and a good athlete, if you make an impact on the field and off the field, like I know Drew Brees, and we won't talk about him much, but Drew Brees won the Walter Payton Award, and that's a huge award because you are a good person on and off the field. So Walter Payton, he is known as one of the greatest people on and off the field, and he's also going to be in the Hall of Fame for being a running back, and he's just known as an outstanding citizen. And these were all guys that I looked up to. I wasn't born in this era. I didn't really watch them on TV, but being a huge football fan, I did a lot of research. I watched a lot of football, and the 1985 Bears I know is an outstanding team. They had outstanding players I wanted to be, and that's what the USA Today ranked the teams as. So we are now looking at our final source of information. This is going to be our final article. So for our final article, we went through Bleacher Report. Every single year they do a 1 through 50 of who's the greatest teams of all time. And they're a really great news source for especially sports. And they ranked 1 through 50, and we're only looking at 3. So for the first team that comes up at number 3 is the 2007 New England Patriots. They won the NFC Championship, but did not win the NFL Championship that year, which is the Super Bowl. They didn't win the Super Bowl. They lost to the New York Giants. That team was led by the greatest quarterback of all time, who is Tom Brady. And if you don't know who Tom Brady is, he won 6 Super Bowls, and he now is with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he's probably going to win another Super Bowl. He's just incredible. He's a winner. And if I could look at that, we would look at that, because he is a winner through and through. And that team was full of stars. That team pretty much had the stars aligned. They had every single athlete you could possibly want on that team. But they did not win due to the New York Giants. They went 14-0, losing the last game of the season in the Super Bowl. So that puts them at number 3. The second team is listed at the 1972 Miami Dolphins. That team did something that the 2007 Patriots could never do, which was win the Super Bowl after going 14-0. This team was considered one of the greatest teams of all time. They were not extremely popular as far as stars on the team, but they were considered great due to their record. But they did not. But they did it with the guys that were not considered to be incredible. They did it with guys in their system. So as I was saying, that you don't need just huge amounts of athletes. You just need guys to fit in your system, and that's what the Miami Dolphins did in that season. They had guys that were just, they fit in their system, and they did great things. And because of their coach, they did great things, and that's why they're at number 2. But at number 1, the greatest team of all time, the 1963 Green Bay Packers, with their legendary coach, as I've said before, Vince Lombardi. So this is another case of why he's the greatest. This team was coached and was so accomplished. They had the Super Bowl trophy named after their head coach because they went so many times. I mean, once you win that many times, they're just like, you can have the trophy because you know you're going to win it. And so that is why they are the most incredible team. They were led huge by their coach, and that's why they won the Super Bowl that year. And they have a huge accomplishment, and their leaders held them through. They had that foundation, and that is why they're considered the greatest team of all time. So with all the research done, everything put together, we've looked at 5 different sources of what coaching can do, what foundation, what character can do for you, and what teams use these. And we can see right here that it says that these teams used it, and they won Super Bowls. And to finalize that, we say that the 1963 Green Bay Packers can be considered the greatest team of all time. And it shows. They had a coach, they had a leader, they had a foundation. They used that culture to win. And they won a lot. And they won a lot of Super Bowls. So much so that Vince Lombardi had the trophy named after him.